What's going on, Summoners? I'm Genghis, and today I'm discussing the best champions to main for each role. All these champions are relatively easy to pick up, but once mastered, provide you really high chances of winning games, or providing 2 champions per lane in order to have a pick for every kind of player. But before we begin, we got our question of the day. If you were stuck in quarantine with one champion from Wild Rift, who would it be? I think I would actually enjoy being stuck with Sona, since she doesn't talk much, and I like my quiet time. But let me know yours in the comments below, and let's get into the video. Alright, for this video, we're switching things around and starting with support, since usually we always talk about that one last. First on the list is my main man, Braum. He's actually considered broken on our tier list, and for good reason. His kit has so many great advantages in this patch, especially considering the new tank items added to Wild Rift. His passive Concussive Blows procs when Braum lands an auto attack or hits his first ability, Winter's Bite. Once 4 procs are stacked, Braum's passive will stun the target. Since Winter's Bite initially slows the target, enemy champions will often find themselves struggling to run away from the shield-wielding mustache man. Enemy champions will often find themselves struggling to run away from the handsome mustachioed man. And how can we mention Braum without also mentioning the utility of his shield? Unbreakable blocks all projectiles in front of him, giving Braum the ability to outplay massive amounts of damage from the enemy team. The more you play him, the more you'll learn of the incredible advantages that you can gain from this single skill. The shield is just simply broken in the duo lane, potentially negating all of the enemy AD carry's damage. And Braum also counters pretty much all the enchanter supports, since they typically rely on range as well. With the lockdown that he provides, Braum is an incredibly oppressive champion to play against. Every team composition can benefit from having at least one tank. Playing a tank and mastering the role drastically increases your chances of victory on the Wild Rift, since so many people seem to just want to lock in damage carries instead. So try maining Braum. He's a very lovable champion, and your teammates will definitely appreciate your clutch plays. For the most part, in patch 2.2, enchanter supports are a little lacking. Without the crowd control and frontline potential necessary to find picks, enchanters perform poorly in impacting the early game. But Janna is an exception. Similar to Braum, she excels in countering the enemy's plays, but instead of utilizing a whopping shield, she disengages with knockups and knockbacks. Maining Janna will teach you the fundamental basics of playing a healing support, while pushing you to play aggressively to maximize the champion picked. Since she has crowd control built into her kit early on, the Janna pick is far more forgiving than her other enchanter supports. If the enemy jungler engages, simply tornado them and walk away. The more that you practice this mechanic, the more it'll become second nature, allowing you to counter the enemy engages while maximizing the play potential from your team. In addition, Janna excels at standing behind her teammates. Her passive grants her allies bonus movement speed when moving towards her, allowing for them to reposition faster. This also allows her to heavily influence her team's plays, maximizing coordination. Also, if you listen to the goons over in our community Discord server, they will try and convince you to play Janna top lane, and it kind of works there too, weirdly enough. And if you listen to the goons over in our community Discord server as well, they'll try and convince you to play Janna in the Baron lane, and it kind of works there too sometimes. I don't know. It's funny to try out though, and we talk about where to play support picks in other lanes all the time, so come hang out and join the conversation. Alright, moving on to AD carries, try maining Ziya. Her kit revolves around repositioning the feathers thrown out from her auto attacks. These fly slightly past her target, dealing damage to a small area. The extended range of her attacks from the feathers allow her to poke down the enemies in lane, making her great in the laning phase. But her advantages don't just end there. Since she's able to deal extra splash damage to the enemy team, her kit also excels in teamfights. Her third skill, Blade Caller, will recall all the feathers thrown back to her, dealing damage and rooting enemy champions when 3 or more feathers hit them at once. Since she can get the feathers out at a very rapid pace, she extends the duration of her allies' crowd control effects while dealing massive damage. And since crowd control is super important on Wild Rift, we highly recommend playing this pick. Once she learns her ultimate, Ziya also becomes insanely difficult to kill. This skill throws her up in the air, granting her invulnerability, and then throws a bunch of arrows out in the direction that she's facing. This grants players a huge safety net, making her forgiving to learn and also to play. Another very safe champion to main is Ezreal. He benefited greatly from the tier and sheen changes brought by patch 2.2. Since tier now stacks faster and sheen was made much cheaper, Ezreal is capable of scaling into his power spikes much earlier on. And with so many frontline threats in the game, AD carry players will definitely benefit from Ezreal's third skill, Arcane Shift. This teleports them a small distance while dealing damage to the nearest enemy unit. The skill interacts very uniquely with crowd control abilities too. When timed properly, Arcane Shift procs immediately after the crowd control effect, allowing Ezreal to completely ignore the lockdown and teleport to a safe position. By standing far back and shooting out his skill shots, he plays super safe while dealing impressive damage. He's a great champion for both beginner and veteran players alike. Players who like positional and mechanical skill will be grateful for his dash that allows him to escape those sticky situations, while the experienced Ezreal players enjoy the high skill cap of his abilities and using that E shift more aggressively. Next, moving on to the jungle. Main Vi. Similar to Ezreal, she's just capable of scaling faster into the game thanks to the new Sheen changes. This allows her to buy her first item power spike way earlier, which then grants her the ability to win more trades. Once she learns her ultimate, Assault and Battery, she takes over the early to mid stages of the game. By simply point and clicking, the skill throws her onto a specific target champion, ignoring all crowd control and breaking through enemy defenses. This makes her one of the best engagers in the game, capable of singling out the most fed enemy. Her kit has 2 knockups as well, making a properly angled gank from Vi absolutely devastating. Vault Breaker carries Vi forward, allowing her to jump a significant distance at a time. This skill can be used both as a gap closer for excellent engage, or even an escape option to retreat over walls, granting her really good versatility throughout the game. She's easy to play, allowing for players that main her to focus on learning jungle pathing rather than mechanics. Unlike champions like Lee Sin and Graves, there isn't much to mechanically master on the champion anyway. Simply knock the enemy up and punch them around until they die. That simple. Learning her is a breeze, so we highly recommend that you main her, especially if you're not as experienced in the jungle. And the next pick for the jungle is Jarvan IV. Running away from Jarvan's knockup combo can be terrifying, since the flag and dash animations are both incredibly quick. Once you learn how to effectively use this combo, you're almost guaranteed to burn a flash when properly ganking a lane. And for those completely new to Jarvan, you can use this combo by simply pressing the third ability twice, rather than aiming the first ability manually. The biggest learning curve is knowing where to place the flag to begin with, but once you master this combo will be your best friend when ganking a lane. He offers great teamfight utility thanks to his engage potential and ultimate ability Cataclysm. This physically traps the enemy targets inside of big mud walls, allowing his team to then follow up. Golden Aegis, his second ability, meanwhile, grants Jarvan a shield while slowing nearby enemies. The bigger the group of people he engages on, the bigger the shield he gets, rewarding the manliest of plays. For those of you looking to main a champion that jumps in while closing in on as many champions as possible, definitely try out Jarvan. The more you play him, the more you'll just understand which engages to actually go for. And you'll often be the initial decisive engage for the team, so playing J4 will teach you how to lead the charge rather than playing passive. Now moving on to the solo lanes, we'll start with the mid lane and Corki. The Yordle is very strong in the current state of the Wild Rift thanks to the changes from patch 2.2. By fixing his passive and buffing Sheen, now's a better time than any to main this champ. He has the ability to absolutely shred tanks and even burst down damage carries, and even has pretty good crowd control and engage through the enhanced jump when acquiring his package. So the skill does not come off that often, it's absolutely busted in Wild Rift. Using the package throws Corki a humongous distance while knocking away all enemies that he goes through. The skill is excellent in following up engages for his team and can actually take the enemy by surprise as a primary engage tool too. He has a great balance of safety and aggression built into his kit with low cooldown skills that can be shot from a far distance, and also a gap closer that can be followed up with his Gatling gun to shred all nearby enemies. Positioning properly is key to maximizing his damage kit. Be careful of where you jump and how close to the enemy you position, since he is still pretty fragile. Next up, we have the newest addition, Galio. He is very different from Corki in that he's beefy and typically wants to jump in head first. As a tanky AP mid lane champion, Galio excels in saving his allies through his heroic entrance. This ability shoots him way up into the air, flying down to a faraway target ally while knocking up all enemies within the vicinity. Understanding and learning to use the skill teaches players to look more adeptly at the map while gauging the tides of a teamfight. This knowledge is essential for all champions, but by playing a more active and visible role in those fights through global map pressure, it's way easier to learn and abuse with maining Galio. In addition, he counters many of the damage carries in the game, with excellent crowd control and even burst damage. He's got a short gat closer that also knocks up, kinda like Vi's, and once he closes the distance, he can proc his taunt. Shield of Durance taunt radius expands the longer that he channels it, potentially devastating the entire enemy team. The skill works particularly well when following up crowd control, synergizing wonderfully with most meta picks in patch 2.2. When playing against a team composition without a strong frontline, having the Galio pick on hand will make the enemy team regret not locking in a tank. Galio strongly counters lots of squishy damage carries, so be sure to try him out. And last up, we have the Baron lane. First up, we suggest maining Camille. But as a disclaimer, don't run with scissors, and also her kit is not that easy to use. Hookshot allows you to jump off of a wall, covering a large amount of distance while locking down the enemy. This skill, when utilized properly, allows her to catch up to any target. And it can also be used as a fantastic tool to escape. With a slow and a literal physical cage to trap the enemy in, Camille excels in picking out single targets. Hextech Ultimatum prevents the enemy from moving out of her cage while pushing all nearby enemies away. Understanding each aspect of this skill is key to maximizing her kit, since the push provides crowd control while isolating a single target enemy champion can change the tides of a single teamfight. Navigating her abilities can be pretty tricky at first since the skills aren't the most conventional, but she is a very high rewarding champion to learn with a really high skill ceiling. And the last champion we have is kind of the opposite from Camille, because what beats scissors if not rock? Malphite is the polar opposite of Camille. His biggest asset in the game is the ultimate ability, which sends him flying and knocks up all units in the area of effect. I'm sure all you Wild Rift players have seen exactly what that ability does, so we don't have to go into how strong it is. But the big thing about maining Malphite is it allows players to learn the importance of timing key abilities. A great Malphite ult requires players to observe and study the enemy team's movements, looking for windows of opportunity when they're most vulnerable to a heavy engage. The skill is probably the easiest knockup ability to hit in Wild Rift, even easier than Jarvan's knockup combo. This makes it so the players are able to learn and observe movement with less pressure on skill utilization. Observing player movement and waiting for opportunities for massive crowd control abilities is prevalent for many different champions, such as Sona, Amumu, and even Kennen, allowing the knowledge from playing Malphite applicable to other lanes as well. And before you try any of these for the first time in a ranked game and hate them, keep in mind that these are suggestions. We're not telling you that you have to main these champions, just want to share our thoughts on the best champions to main. Also, if you learned anything new from the video, you already know what to do. Like the video, sub to the channel, and join our Discord through the link in the description down below. That's it for today, so as always, best of luck on the Rift, everybody. Stay hydrated, and I'll see you next time.